There are just as many people who become neurotic because they are merely normal as there are people who are neurotic because they cannot become normal. That it should enter anyone's head to educate them to normality is a nightmare for the former because their deepest need is really to be able to lead abnormal lives. Schools teach us to think in the same way. The news makes sure we all fear the same things. Advertisements convince us to want the same products. Social media makes it easy to shame or mock those who dare to be different. Because of all this, many people choose to follow the crowd instead of thinking for themselves. At the same time, a lot of people today struggle with constant stress, worry, and sadness. This leads to an important question. Can trying too hard to fit in make us mentally unwell? The famous Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung believed this was true. In this video, we will explore what neurosis is and how too much conformity can make people more likely to suffer from it. Neurosis is a mental health problem that causes deep and lasting anxiety. It makes people feel overwhelmed by fear, even when there is no real danger. In addition to this, neurosis can also lead to sadness, guilt, irrational fears, obsessive thoughts, compulsive behaviors, constant worrying, trouble sleeping, irritation, or sudden anger. Carl Jung suggested that the neurotic's fear of life was a result of a disturbed or diminished process of adaptation and a morbid development of the whole of a personality. A neurotic person, in simple terms, is someone who struggles to cope with life's challenges. Their personality does not fully grow, and because of this, their life becomes a constant battle, with little relief from stress or worry. Although neurosis is not usually life-threatening, it slowly drains the joy and energy out of life. It holds us back from reaching our full potential, traps us inside a shrinking comfort zone, and fills us with regret for missed opportunities. It damages our relationships, makes it harder to develop new skills, and even harms our physical health because long-term anxiety and sadness take a serious toll on the body. Jung went as far as to call a neurosis the agony of a human soul in all its vast complexity. According to Jung, a neurotic illness is triggered by 3 conditions. First, a person comes across a difficult situation, an important task, or a problem that needs to be solved in a meaningful part of life. Second, instead of dealing with the challenge, the person avoids it. This may happen because they feel afraid, lack motivation, doubt themselves, or simply do not think things through properly. If we follow the history of a neurosis with attention, we regularly find a critical moment when some problem emerged that was evaded. Having a problem that someone wants to avoid is not enough to cause a neurosis. There is another important factor, which is the use of mental defenses to push the problem out of one's awareness. It would be a big mistake to think that just having problems means someone has neurosis. The difference is clear. A neurotic person struggles because they are unaware of their own problems. Some common ways people try to protect themselves from difficult feelings include pushing upsetting thoughts away, taking out emotions on someone else, blaming others for their own problems, staying overly busy to avoid thinking, using substances to feel numb, or staying away from places or situations that might remind them of their struggles. Relying on these mental defenses comes with a price. It often leads to even more anxiety. As Jung once wrote about one of his patients who suffered from neurosis, by repressing disagreeable thoughts, she created something like a psychic vacuum, which, as usually happens, gradually became filled with anxiety. Had she troubled herself consciously with her thoughts, she would have known what was lacking, and she would then have needed no anxiety states as a substitute for the absence of conscious suffering. Avoiding responsibilities and refusing to face life's challenges has become very common in today's world. This is one reason why so many people struggle with neurotic illnesses. Jung identified several reasons for this problem. First, many parents unknowingly pass their own fears and anxieties onto their children. Young people tend to copy the behavior of their parents, so if a mother or father is afraid of facing life's difficulties, their child may also learn to avoid problems instead of solving them. As Jung explains, children's mental struggles are often linked to the mindset of their parents. In many cases, it is more useful to focus on the mistaken attitudes of parents and teachers rather than on the child's own mind, which would develop in a healthy way if not disturbed by harmful influences from adults. Another reason why so many people struggle with neurosis is that many young adults do not fully separate from their parents as they grow older. While their bodies mature, their minds remain dependent, which makes it much more likely that they will experience mental distress. Or, as Jung explains, although it is unfortunate for a child to grow up without parents, it can be just as harmful to remain too attached to them. A bond that is too strong can make it much harder for a person to adapt to the world later in life. This is because human beings are not meant to stay children forever. Many influences in society encourage laziness and a passive attitude, which can lead people to avoid life's challenges in a way that causes neurosis. For instance, many people overuse addictive technology, rely too much on governments that limit personal responsibility, eat unhealthy foods that reduce energy, and take too many mood-altering or recreational drugs. In addition, modern values no longer place enough importance on bravery and independence, which should be recognized as essential qualities for a strong and healthy life. Although there are many reasons why neurosis is so common, the most important question for someone who suffers from it is, how can it be overcome? Jung believed that the answer depends on where the problem comes from. Is it something in the outside world, such as people, places, or situations? Or is it something inside a person's own mind that needs to be understood and worked through? In my picture of the world, there is a vast outer realm and an equally vast inner realm. Between these two stands man, facing now one and now the other. Difficulties in the outside world often appear as struggles to handle the basic responsibilities of social life. For example, some individuals find it hard to make friends or build close relationships. Others have trouble finding a stable job or playing a helpful role in their community. Some do not develop a strong enough social identity or the ability to present themselves well to others. These challenges are shared by everyone in society, as they are essential parts of life that all people must learn to navigate. Jung described cases of neurosis that come from avoiding these responsibilities as examples of weakened social adjustment. People dealing with this kind of emotional difficulty need to learn how to develop essential abilities that help them live and thrive within society. Because of his illness, the person was partly or completely separated from everyday life. As a result, he missed out on important responsibilities, whether related to achieving goals or simply doing things expected of any person. To get better, he needs to return to taking care of these duties. Some people manage to do everything society expects of them. They build a family, have friends, find a good job, and enjoy financial comfort. Even with all these things, they may still struggle with emotional difficulties. Or, as Jung writes, psychotherapists are familiar with the collectively adapted person who has everything and does everything that could reasonably be required as a guarantee of health, but yet is ill. The challenge these individuals are avoiding doesn't come from the world around them, but from inside their own minds. They are afraid of being themselves and ignore the inner voice that encourages them to grow and express their unique qualities. He is incapable of living his own life and finding the character that belongs to him. These individuals may seem perfectly normal, blending in so well with others that they avoid questioning who they truly are. Their success in fitting into society becomes a wall that keeps them from exploring their inner thoughts and feelings. However, just as becoming part of a group is important, discovering what makes each person unique is equally essential. If we don't find ways to grow into our own selves, emotional struggles can follow. As Jung explains, there are many people who absolutely need to develop their individuality, especially in a time like ours when society often forces everyone to fit the same mold. In my experience, this growth is necessary for countless individuals. To find healing, someone who is overly focused on being normal must go through a kind of symbolic death. This means letting go of things that feel safe and familiar so that their true, unique self can come forward. as Jung explains. It's well known that reaching the highest point in life can be described through the symbol of death, because growing beyond who you are now requires leaving parts of your old self behind. Personal traits, relationships, career paths, and especially familiar ways of thinking and behaving, many of these must be let go to allow something new to grow. We also need to give up our strong need for approval from others and the comfort we feel by blending in. As Jung suggests, we must be drawn away from ourselves onto different paths that help our true character fully develop. The person struggling with inner difficulties must truly walk the path they have discovered to be their own and stay on it until a clear signal from their inner mind shows them they are headed in the wrong direction. If we've spent years, or even most of our lives, following the path of fitting in, doing what's expected, and seeking approval from others, the idea of stepping onto a different, more authentic path can feel terrifying. The fear of standing out and going against the grain is real. We might be laughed at, judged, or disappoint those who have come to rely on the predictable version of us. Some people may even withdraw the respect they once showed us. The thought of losing this hard-earned validation can be enough to keep us trapped in a life that doesn't truly belong to us. But as the psychologist Carl Jung reminds us, to heal a neurosis, you have to take a chance. Doing something without risk accomplishes nothing. His words encourage us to reconsider what we think of as safe. Because staying stuck in the comfortable but stifling patterns of conformity is in itself a dangerous gamble, one with no real reward. It might protect us from criticism, but at what cost? We risk giving up the very essence of who we are, leaving our talents buried and our days clouded with anxiety, sadness, guilt, and self-doubt. Instead of thriving, we merely exist, haunted by the life we were too afraid to pursue. For those who struggle under the weight of social expectations, it's worth remembering that some of us simply aren't meant to fit the mold of normal. In fact, breaking free from societal constraints may be the only way for us to find true fulfillment and health. Jung saw this clearly, writing, "Many neurotic individuals don't need reminders of social duties. They are meant to bring new cultural ideas into the world. They stay neurotic as long as they submit to authority and deny themselves the freedom they are meant to have." In other words, some people carry the seeds of cultural change. They are not meant to conform, but to challenge, inspire, and innovate. By freeing themselves from the chains of conformity, they not only heal their own minds, but also make the world a more vibrant, dynamic place. Taking that first risky step into authenticity may be frightening, but it could also be the beginning of a life worth living.